and ITVX.
Now, the latest ITV News from Granada Reports in the northwest.
Good evening and welcome to Granada Reports. Two teenagers are starting jail sentences tonight for the murder of 16-year-old Brianna Ghey. We can now reveal that the killers were Scarlett Jenkinson and Eddie Ratcliffe, both of them now also 16. They were known as Girl X and Boy Y through their trial because of their age. Brianna, who was transgender, was lured to Colchester Linear Park in Warrington last February and stabbed to death. Our reporter Emma Sweeney is at Manchester Crown Court. And Emma, another incredibly hard day for Brianna's family, but some measure of justice for them.
Well, that's right, Gamal. I mean, as much as justice can ever be served in a case described by the judge today as exceptionally brutal. Now, neither defendant showed any emotion here today in court, and quite frankly, it's the way it's been throughout these entire proceedings. They were both told that they would serve life sentences. Scarlett Jenkinson, first of all, was told that she would serve a minimum of 22 years behind bars and that she may never be considered for release. The judge said that it was clear that she was the driving force behind this sadistic act and that she had lied so many times that it was difficult to know when she was telling the truth and when she wasn't. Now, Eddie Ratcliffe looked straight ahead of him as he was told that he would serve a minimum of 20 years behind bars. The judge said that it was clear that he had actively participated in Brianna Ghey's murder and that he was motivated in part because she was transgender. My colleague Rob Smith has tonight's top story.
The coldest of cold stares from cold-blooded killers. Scarlett Jenkinson from Colchester and Eddie Ratcliffe from Lee, both 15, prepped to murder someone for months.
Scarlett?
Yeah?
You are under arrest.
You Eddie?
Yeah.
Eddie, you're locked up suspicion of murder.
They were caught little more than 24 hours after luring a girl to her death with a promise of friendship. Brianna Ghey sparkled online to thousands of followers, but struggled with her mental health. The 16-year-old left home in Warrington to see Jenkinson, who she knew from school, and Ratcliffe, Jenkinson's closest friend. Known as X and Y during their trial, they told Brianna they wanted to hang out in a park. But privately, they told each other they wanted to see and hear her horror. By a bench, the pair said a code word. Brianna was stabbed 28 times.
You both took part in a brutal and planned murder which was sadistic in nature and where a secondary motive was hostility towards Brianna because of her transgender identity. You will only be released if, in the future, it is decided that you no longer present a danger.
Obviously you are under caution, so anything you say is getting recorded.
Okay. With me being suspect is because, I was the last person seen it.
Jenkinson tried to lie her way out of the crime after being arrested at home, claiming Brianna stormed off in the park to meet a boy. In her bedroom, officers found a handwritten murder plan with Brianna listed as victim. It had the date of the killing and detailed how it would happen. Plus, there were notes on serial killers.
I can't explain.
Ratcliffe's explanation also cut no ice as he was cuffed at his house. He tried to blame his co-accused, but a knife hidden in a wardrobe tested positive for Brianna's blood and his DNA. The pair's seized devices contained months of sick messages, research into weapons and poisons, and a list of 5 people they wanted dead, including Brianna. Jenkinson has since written another kill list while in custody.
We had our suspicions that it was Scarlett before we actually knew for sure that it was.
Brianna's mum Esther told me those fears came from her daughter texting to say she was meeting Jenkinson, which was unusual. Brianna preferred to be home as anxiety scared her out and about.
It was something that I tried not to think about, that it could have been for somebody that Brianna trusted.
She thought she was going to meet a friend.
Yeah.
She thought she was meeting a friend of a friend. but it was a massive betrayal.
Mm-hmm. It's scary to think that somebody that you trust could do such a thing. It's scary to think that somebody in general could do such a thing to anybody. I feel really, really sorry for the families. They clearly didn't know that, and didn't think that their child would be capable of such a thing, and nobody goes out of their way to make their child or to turn their child into somebody like that. For me, I've lost Brianna, but I believe that Brianna's in a better place now. I really do. I feel like she's at peace, whereas they've got to continue the rest of their lives now with their children in prison.
Children whose public facades were like thousands of others. For Jenkinson, selfies, video dances. For Ratcliffe, sport, competing as a kickboxer. He was also intelligent, a high achiever. But detectives learned he'd few friends and was described by his co-accused as a sociopath. And they soon discovered she'd sought out real torture videos on the dark web.
She came across as a very polite and quiet child.
Emma Mills was Scarlett Jenkinson's head teacher. She was also Brianna's. Jenkinson moved to Birchwood Community High after she gave cannabis-laden sweets to a child at a previous school. A source says the seriousness of the incident was never made clear. But in classrooms, in corridors here, nothing in Jenkinson's behaviour stood out.
With Scarlett, it's a 1 in a billion chance that you come across somebody in your life that is capable of something like this.
And capable of hiding it.
Yeah, and I think that's the challenging part, is that if we were able to see in people that they were capable of doing these things, then we wouldn't have murderers.
Murderers who'll spend years locked up. Jenkinson a minimum of 22, Ratcliffe 20. What the girl they killed could have achieved, the judge said, no one will ever know. Rob Smith, ITV News.
Well, Brianna was killed after going to meet Scarlett Jenkinson, someone she thought she could trust. But there were people in her life who were genuine friends. One was Amelia, a fellow trans girl from Edinburgh. The two were in constant contact online and were planning a future together. Amelia came all the way from Scotland to see Brianna's killers jailed. I asked her a short time ago about how today had been for her.
It's, being quite, I don't know the word, comforting, though, to know that, that everything is, going to be okay. The killers, they've been named, they've been faced, and they are in jail, even though it may not be, the best, the longest amount, but it is still, decent, and it's a good thing to, know that at least that isn't going to be a problem, to have them, on the streets, and to know that they're caught and they're not going to be able to harm anyone.
And talk to me about what it was seeing the killers in court.
It was very nerve-wracking, but it was also it made me quite angry because of how they had no remorse whatsoever, and how Scarlett was, sat there playing with toys, and Eddie was on a word search book. They weren't even paying attention to a single word that the judge was saying. They didn't care. They are pure evil.
How will you remember Brianna?
I will remember Brianna as one of my bestest friends I've ever had, as the bond that me and Brianna had was, no other person will ever, come close to the bond that we had, because of our similarities and our personalities. We really did connect, and I know for a fact that I will never have that again, because there's no one else like Brianna. She was an icon, she literally was. I feel like she had so much potential in life, and they'd taken that away from her.
Amelia, thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Well, what many will find shocking is the contrast between Brianna's killers' outward normality and their malign intentions. What were their motivations, and were there signs they were capable of committing such a horrific crime? Earlier, I spoke to criminal psychologist Dr. Dara Mujtahidi, and we began by watching footage of the teenager's arrest.
How come I'm a suspect?
How come you're a suspect?
Is it because I'm the last person at scene, or is it?
I don't know. All the information I've received is you are a suspect, okay, for the murder.
Yeah. So she's visibly upset. She says, how come I'm a suspect? Is it because I'm the last person to see her? What did you make of her demeanour there?
She is trying to evade apprehension, and she's trying to mislead the authorities. The tears are there, but the tears just tell me she's upset because she's realised that she's going to be caught, and in fact she's not going to be able to outsmart the police.
I can explain everything.
No, listen. Right, listen. Do it all on interview, all right? Yeah. You're going to take it to the corner, you'll be interviewed about it, they'll ask you questions, all right?
Yeah.
His demeanour seems very different there, doesn't it? He says, I can explain everything. He seems much calmer.
They expect to be apprehended, and once apprehended, they're willing to confess. And he does say, you know, I can explain everything, assuming he's going to explain the actual offence. Very rarely do we see them trying to deny the offence and try and plead innocence. The fact that we have so many Netflix documentaries and podcasts about serial killers tells us that individuals in society are fascinated over the idea of murder. Not committing it, but because it's such a horrific and abnormal behaviour, a lot of people are drawn to it or interested to it. This went one step further in that not only she was fascinated, she somewhat idolised them and tried to follow in their footsteps.
And in Jenkinson's notes there were love hearts, smiley faces. Those aren't synonymous with the person that is intends to kill.
On one side you've got this very meticulous plan of how they're going to orchestrate the murder, and on the other hand you've got a reminder that this is just a child, you know, someone that draws smiley faces and love hearts. And what that tells you in addition is that this wasn't an emotionally jarring process for her.
Do you think they can ever be rehabilitated?
From what we've gathered so far, there doesn't seem to be this adverse, grave childhood experience that may explain any of this. So it would be much more difficult to rehabilitate someone like these two individuals.
Dr. Mujtahidi, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
OK, let's go back to Emma now. And Emma, some heartbreaking words from Brianna's parents in court.
Well, that's right, Gamal. Now, Brianna's mother was too upset to speak in court today. Instead, a statement was read out on her behalf, and it was a really emotional statement. She talked about how quiet the house was without Brianna, and she talked about going up to her room, putting her ear against the wall in a bid to hear Brianna giggling, talking to friends on FaceTime, but instead all she heard was silence. We also heard from Peter Spooner today, Brianna's father. He told the court that he was in the process of building a new relationship with his daughter, but that chance was cruelly taken from him by two people he described in court today as being monsters. They stole the life of a young girl who had everything to live for.
Emma, thank you. Well, a lot of the focus today has been about the two teenagers who killed Brianna Ghey. But let's end the programme with Brianna herself. Family and friends say despite her confident and outgoing persona online, Brianna was shy and vulnerable. As court was sitting earlier today, it emerged that a fundraising campaign in Brianna's memory had reached its target of £50,000. The money will be spent on mindfulness classes in schools to help children cope with their fears and their anxieties. Brianna's memory, indeed, lives on. A very good night. Bye-bye.